Whether you're just starting your culinary journey, finding your stride, or mastering the art of culinary leadership, a 140-page book can dispense 30 years of wisdom pretty quickly. Welcome back to my channel for professional chefs who aspire to elevate their leadership skills for stronger culinary programs that ultimately serve exceptional cuisine. I'm Gerald, a certified master chef with almost 30 years in the culinary industry, from washing dishes at the local golf course in Dearborn, Michigan, to leading and consulting exclusive multi-million-dollar culinary operations. Recently, I posted a video, and in the comments section there was a question asking about some of the books that I would recommend. So I decided to go deeper on the subject. Depending on where you are in your journey, finding your stride, mastering the art of culinary leadership, even just getting started, I've curated a list of essential reads tailored to the different stages. I love to read now. If you're like I was 10 or 15 years ago and struggled to read, pick up a book, even sit down long enough to read a page, it's still possible to consume material. Audiobooks make it so much easier, and that was really the gateway for me. Downloading Audible on Amazon was a huge game changer. I enjoy reading now, but it took me some time to get there, so don't think that I'm just started off at this place where I just love to digest books. So let's dive in and uncover how I believe these books can shape your path to becoming a culinary leader. 9 impactful books for every stage of the culinary journey. When I first started cooking, the internet hadn't really taken off. In fact, it was the early 90s, and there were a lot of resources that weren't really available. Books were kind of the only way to go about getting information. Our Culinary was huge. Had worked for some chefs who always had these great libraries in their offices, who were always encouraging me to pick up a book or take a look at some of what other people were doing. You know, chefs like Charlie Trotter or Thomas Keller was just getting his start. It's actually before the French Laundry book even came out. I remember, like, on TV, it was before the Food Network even really blew up. This was like when great chefs of the East or great chefs of New Orleans or...
Welcome to Great Chefs, a culinary tour of the United States featuring some of the country's finest chefs.
Great chefs of France was like on PBS, like on TV when we used to have the turn dial. And I remember so vividly all the little lessons that came from those. And I still enjoy actually watching the Great Chef series because it goes back to the profession and the real cooking that I love in our day-to-day operation, not being a TV personality. So looking back on the things that were given to me to read, I realized that they paired really well with what was being taught in the kitchen for that particular stage of my journey. In the early stages of the career, I think it's critical to start by understanding the foundations, and finding that passion is absolutely key. You know, that place, that spot is a great time in the career to learn the monotonous things that we're going to have to do every single day anyway, and learn how to enjoy it. Passion is a big driving force in this business. And also is curiosity, right? Curiosity to find a more efficient way, curiosity to find a more efficient way to meet a standard. And I have to say that those things didn't necessarily come easy. I was very fortunate in working in great places with really high standards that encouraged that I do these particular things while I was developing. But there were a couple of books that were given to me, and one for the aspiring young cook given to me to read. The first one is a book called Becoming a Chef, which is written by Dornenberg and Page. They have professional culinary texts that really have impacted my career along the way. They wrote the Flavor Bible, Culinary Artistry. Let's keep this list small, right? The reason why I think that book is so critical is because it really outlines the life of a chef. It talks about the greats of that era. It emphasizes the passion, the dedication, the endless pursuit of knowledge that really drove so many of those great chefs at the time. I think it's a reminder that becoming a chef is as much about character and commitment as it is about skill and development in the craft. At this particular stage in development, in those beginning stages, skill development is absolutely critical. And that's why I say it's foundational, because everything else gets built on top of it. And it becomes very difficult to build a great career later on in life if those skills aren't built from the beginning, or at least in the earlier stages. Those skills really create a firm, solid foundation that you can always come back to. You know, those skills are things that can never be taken away from you, and they'll go with you no matter where you go. in the day and age that we're in, the craft becomes ever more important, because learning how to craft value out of secondary cuts of meat, or butchering your own products, or knowing how to make a great force meat is a phenomenal way to bring a well-crafted dish to a guest and hit the bottom line food cost numbers. And so that first book, right, Becoming a Chef, I think is a great segue into what you can look forward to. Albeit a little bit dated at this point, 30 years later, I still think there's a lot of relevant lessons. Next is a book called The Apprentice. Takes somebody who's an icon in the industry, takes him back to his humble beginnings. It's his journey from being that humble boy, growing up in a French countryside, to becoming a renowned chef. The book highlights the value of mentorship, resilience, and the continuous pursuit of excellence. What I like most about the book is that it brings it right back to the core principles that make a great chef that start in the beginning. And to me, that's where all the value of these books early on in the career come from, is kind of showing you early on what's possible for later on if you start developing these things. Discipline is not sexy, right? But it's absolutely necessary. It's the little actions day by day that stack up to yield a massive result in the end. And I think most importantly, it's really nice to be able to see somebody who's accomplished so much at the beginning of their career. And I think the book is really well written to capture a lot of that. And the third book for this section is the Institute Paul Bocuse book, where it's really very much so a textbook for the program. It's just that the pictures, the material inside, everything that's outlined is just so thorough and so clear and so concise that it could be what I call a backbone culinary book. When I'm working with my chefs in my programs, I talk a lot about having a culinary backbone that takes you to a place where you get fundamental information that is capable of producing sound, consistent, great end results. And to me, the comprehensiveness of this book makes it very easy to tap into the teachings of Chef Paul Bocuse and the great chefs that he worked with. Paul Bocuse was a phenomenal businessman who built, yet again, another restaurant empire. But this book is something that can totally allow anyone to build a career on strong culinary fundamentals. It's a testament to the importance of solid culinary education and mastering the basics for forging the path ahead. Those skills will carry you no matter where you go, no matter what direction you take it in. It doesn't mean that this is the only one. Mine, when I was growing up, was The Pro Chef, which I still think was a great book. And that was the 4th edition. That was a long time ago. Now I think the 8th edition is a much better version with better vetted recipes and better ratios, great material. But I still like the way that the Institute Paul Bocuse is written. And one of the pieces that I always encourage for executive chefs to do that I work with is to take these books and leverage them with your team to have a vetted resource for people to go and find deeper information when they're producing something for you. That way you have a point of reference that they can go to. You don't need 10. If you have one, it's a great place to continue to send people so that it reinforces the teaching that you have in your kitchen. So whether you're trying to support the newer generation of cooks or you're among the newer generation of cooks, these 3 books can definitely set you up for the future. At this stage, it's so much about focusing on fundamentals, structure, and standards, not the creativity aspect. Creativity is so much easier when you have a solid foundation of fundamental skills built upon the idea that food has to be enjoyable and delicious first. As you reach the midpoint of your career, it's time to refine those skills. It's time to take that culinary skill and it's time to start to adapt not only to your culinary voice, but to start taking on those leadership roles. And so I think the next phase is a mix of culinary fundamental, flavor development, and leadership. As a cook at this stage of the journey, right, the first book that I would start you off on, and I think belongs in every chef's library, is called The Flavor Bible. Another book by Dornenberg and Page. I mean, they don't give me any money. I just think that they make some really great books that talk about culinary philosophy in a very relatable way. Works for me. The Flavor Bible is an indispensable guide to creating extraordinary flavor combinations on the high level. On the low level, it's a great way to keep you grounded in flavors that match one another and really harmonize a menu. It's a great go-to for writing menus. And the earlier in your career you learn how to use this book, the faster you'll be able to implement the ideas and the more consistently you'll remember to kind of check back on that and double check and make sure that your flavor profiles are matching up. You know, at this midpoint in the career, you're responsible for having a palate, people aren't going to go out of their way to remind you to taste things. It's now your job to remind people to taste things. But it's also your job to start to segue into that next phase where you understand flavor on a deeper level so you can explain it. I think at this stage, it's really easy to want to start to develop your own unique culinary style, but it's still a little bit premature. You want to set up a foundation that you can build on, and that's going to come from having a great resource like this at the handy. The next book is what I would call maybe the first leadership book that I think most everybody should read. I say this because I know there's a million leadership books out there, and there's a lot of really good ones. And it was a tough argument in my head between this book and another one. So I'm going to tell you about this book, and then I'm going to tell you what the other one is, right? But so technically there's 4 books in this section, but let's just stay focused, right? I'm working to stay focused here. And that's the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, written by John Maxwell. So for those of you that know that I'm a professional coach, I have my professional coaching certification through the John Maxwell Institute. He's written 80 some leadership books. He's got a ton of great material. Now, the reason why I selected this one, right, is because literally outlines in a very clear, concise fashion, 21 clear laws of being a great leader. And I don't think that somebody at this stage of their journey is really going to have all of the tools to be a leader yet, but they're on their path. There may be some natural leadership ability, and each one of these laws will help those with some natural leadership ability tap into that and go even further. But great leaders are made regardless of whether they have natural leadership talent or not. And knowing and living at least half of the 21 laws is going to make someone a phenomenal leader. Understanding simple laws and rules of human psychology is really at the core of what makes the book so useful. And so it's even something that I still go back to, I still check in on, I still use oftentimes when I'm stuck. So highly recommend this as the first leadership book that somebody really starts to get into. Most people by now have either been in college and picked up some leadership books or grabbed a leadership book and read one. I just think that this is a really phenomenal foundational leadership book that also provides a clear, strong foundation that's going to help build a successful, positive leadership career. Now, the other book, the bonus book that I would say, is The 1 Minute Manager. Now, The 1 Minute Manager is a much shorter read, very simple, very, very, very concise and to the point, with a lot of little tips and pieces. It's just not as structured as I would maybe like it to be now. Looking back, The 1 Minute Manager was a phenomenal read for me at that time. Looking from where I'm at now and what I would want to use as a tool, I think the newer generation of cooks can handle a more concise, defined, clear thought process flow of laws that will help them govern how they choose to lead. And now the final book in this section is a book called Work Clean, written by Dan Charnas. It is written by somebody who doesn't necessarily live in the kitchen, which is why I think it's so useful, because it's an outside take on how we approach organization and preparation in the kitchen. And I think it hones in on even more of how important those pieces are, and yet still be relevant to every industry, right? Mise en place is a beautiful thing, and mise en place technically really is at the core of everything that we do. So the book draws on the parallels between chefs, highly effective, organized chefs, and professions, all professionals in a variety of professions. So there's something to be learned here for everybody. The book talks through how mise en place is looked at from the outside. And for me, that became very interesting to see how other people talk about what we do. And I think the way that people value that is a good reminder as to how valuable that can be. I also think that it's always relevant to work clean in the business. And at this midpoint in the career, it's super important to make sure that you're continuing to work clean and now remembering that you're an example for everyone that comes after you. For every chef at every phase, the book is a total game changer if you're aiming to elevate productivity and your leadership. It gives you more of that sturdy foundation and also some of the vocabulary and some of the other tools to go along with that. So that being said, these are all great theories. They all need to be acted on, right? So if you're trying to read these books and you're aspiring for a great career in the profession, right, I encourage you to work in establishments whose values align with the teachings and provide an environment for strong fundamental cooking, places that make their own stocks, places that do at least a percentage of their butchery, places that have a culinary program that are doing a variety of different things, because those are the environments where you're going to learn the most to be able to relay that into your career. Great culinary technique will always serve you well. And being able to lead a team means that you're able to have a team behind you to execute the culinary standards that you've established. It really provides you with choices, and it provides you with options, and it adds to the value that you're going to bring to every operation. Another piece here that I just want to touch on for a second is just stay curious. Curious cooks are so much fun to work with, and my curiosity keeps me going every single day. I've never met a chef that doesn't want to teach a curious cook or a curious sous chef. Now, the long-awaited final part, and I don't even think that we're ever really done. I know that I'm never done, and the more I go, the more I realize that there's more that I want to learn. Paul Bocuse is on record for saying, somebody asked him as he was in his late 80s what his regret was, and his regret was that he couldn't live more lives to learn more in the kitchen. And I think that in the later stages of the culinary journey, maybe 10 years plus, the focus is inevitably going to shift towards leaving a legacy, building a culinary repertoire and a team that is going to allow you to create that legacy. Inevitably, you're going to be heading in the direction of mentoring the next generation, even perhaps like redefining aspects of an industry. The stronger the tools, the stronger the ideas that you implement, the stronger your outputs are going to be. Now, that being said, the first book that I would steer you in the direction of at this point is picking up Le Guide Culinaire by Escoffier, like the OG classical French textbook, because it's a classical tome built on discipline, organization, but still with a spirit of innovation from 115 years ago. It's a reminder of our roots and the timeless principles of cooking at a very advanced level. And I think it's super critical for us as chefs as we get further from the stove, because the desires and the needs of our job take us there, to stay grounded in high level production of food. Classical cooking offers us a very clear roadmap for very high level principles. Not to say that everybody needs to cook classical French. What I'm saying though is an understanding of it is going to contribute to any cuisine that you cook and to every team that you work with. Now, as we move in the direction of leadership, the next book that makes the list is Lessons in Leadership by Chef Charles Carroll. Another groundbreaking book that very clearly, in a very pleasant manner, outlines some principles and philosophies for chefs to very easily consume. It's a very reasonable book. It's a very easy, pleasant read. So the book itself, right, really focuses in and hones in on the power of positive leadership and the benefits that come about it in an operation, and maybe shift some mindsets to being a little bit more, to being more concise, more considerate, and more cohesive in the team. It also provides a lot of tools that I found for me in my career, help me inspire others a little bit, and actually kind of cracked the code for me to be able to embrace other people's ideas and understand the benefits of allowing other people to make decisions and own projects. It was a real code cracker for me there. The final book for this list is a book called Leadership, again by John Maxwell. So you can actually see that there's some authors that I really like, Dornenberg and Page, and then John Maxwell is obviously another one, because I really think that he's probably the foremost leadership writer that's out there. And what leadership is about making the necessary changes to adopt new ideas and thrive in a very rapidly changing world and in changing industries. It wasn't written for the culinary industry, but it absolutely applies, especially with the teams that we have and the resources that we have to manage. Now, the book itself challenges you to shift your leadership approach to be more dynamic, hands-on, forward-thinking, positive. I believe the book is absolutely essential for any chef ready to lead the culinary world into the future, because it talks more about building leaders who can lead for you. And the more leadership you have, the more problems that get resolved. I truly believe that kind of the state of society that we're in right now is due to lack of solid leadership and strong principles. Those are 9 of my favorites. There's so many more. I really obviously couldn't pick just one. If you have a book that you go to, I would love to hear about it, and I'd love for you to write about it in the comments below. Share it with me. So let me know in the comments below if you've got something that I didn't mention, or if one of these is one of your go-tos as well. Oftentimes in our careers, we're faced with choices and new obstacles confront us. All of us are. Doesn't matter who we are, doesn't matter where we are in our journey, we're always encountering new challenges. And when I finally accepted that I needed new thinking to overcome those new obstacles, things started to get a little bit easier. And then eventually I realized that I didn't have to think that I always needed to have the answer. That's where I think books like the 21 Laws of Leadership helped me understand that, because they showed me what I didn't know, and they reinforced some of the things that I did. And it also showed me that there were answers that laid with outside of myself. So I think the sooner you pick up some of these things, the sooner they're going to have a positive impact. When I started finding those answers in books, reputable Instagram accounts and YouTube videos, realized that I could save myself a ton of time and energy, and trial and error work got so much easier for me. Oftentimes, I found words to describe things that I was feeling that couldn't necessarily describe yet. Each one of the books that I listed here provides unique perspectives and valuable lessons that I found along my journey as a leader in the industry. So whether you're just starting out, honing your craft, or leading the charge into the future, there's wisdom to be found. No matter where you look, you can learn something. Any one of these books is going to be a useful nudge to a career. Instead of reading all 9, pick one and find a thing to implement in any one of the books, and I promise that it will help have exponential evolution in the career. As I've mentioned kind of throughout the video, for me, the keys to growth as a chef are curiosity, willingness to grow, desire to learn. All of that paired with an unyielding passion for the craft make an unstoppable culinarian. And they make for a fun career too. Thank you for giving me your time today, and thank you for listening to this video. Please share or subscribe. Share your thoughts down below if you have some with your favorite reads, and let me know if this is useful content for you. Thank you for watching, and remember, hope is not a winning strategy. Little disciplines make massive successes. Until next time, see you soon.